Well, hello everyone. Here to show you that a job interview artistic smile coloring activity right here. As you see right here is basically an activity right here that I went ahead and put together of showing right here of say example right here of me, and then of course right here is the guy right here is an example right here of some paperwork it is. And basically the paperwork that could be related to, like, say, is online applications, and with most of the time that they could also be called like what you call like a online AMP. It is at AMPs, I guess, for application. It's like talk about downloadable applications, or it's like any type of online applications to complete. But a lot of times though, with most jobs though, that anybody would maybe think, if you're gonna be getting a job or working a type of job, if it's a part-time or full-time, it is of knowing about it's like so far as artistic, say with the type of skills, and of course things that more likely that you can learn it is. And basically though, that with most of the time, if you're going to be going on an interview, that they would ask you questions, and then talk to you about some certain things it is, such as it's like maybe about based on your experience. It is with anybody would maybe think about, like, if you're going to be starting a job somewhere, working in an office or something like that, they would probably ask you about your experience. It is. And with most of the time though, that like with anybody would say that if you were to be applying for like a job at, as like a bank clerk or something like that, a clerk, or maybe a custodian or janitor, or something like that, or maybe office assistant, that more likely that mechanic, especially of working at a business, it is, you could have been it's like if you want to get a job, maybe a doctor, as a doctor or something like that, therapist, some type of job like that. And a lot of times though, it goes by the question of knowing about based on the experience though, that most of us may think that with most jobs that you can get nowadays, that a lot of times that they require, some of it requires experience, some of it requires maybe a certain type of degree, and so far as between a higher and maybe a type of a certain level, scale level between you say maybe from 5 to 10 or something like that percent it is. And it's like the types of education though, that knowing about if you were to be transferring jobs, or if it was any other type of position it was. And with anybody would maybe think about that, that you hear about that, like talking about, we pretty much know that, I'm like, if you're going to be going out looking for a job, that maybe you may be looking for something that maybe pays more. Let's like talk about something that pays a little bit more than on average, from another job that you worked it was, and plus how they pay, maybe direct deposit, whichever it is. But so far with job interview though, that I keep thinking about, I was thinking already to myself, I'm like talking about like that the questions that more likely with most of the time with the during a job interview, that they would ask you questions such as how good are you at working with other people, how good are you operating with machines it is. And maybe they would ask you a question such as why should we hire you than hire this other person. And some people that may give off the answers such as, well, maybe because I'm capable of getting the job done, maybe because I'm better looking, whichever it is. But I'm like some people that may say that that there's a right or wrong answer towards that, like talking about that more likely that they may not hire you if you say that well, because I got here first in line, I was the first person in line, to complete an application, and I waited 15 or so minutes, to be helped it was, or that I brought my own pens, or I dressed properly. Some people that may say that I dressed properly for the interview, so you gotta hire me, or that I'm the one who said please, or something like that. But on the other hand too, that if there was a situation to where if you were needing a job, and then on the other hand too, with most of the time with most job interviews, I can remember I haven't been to several of them, but I've been to a couple of them, that about maybe 4 or 5 of them, and knowing about that I did not get the position. And what was that reason? Because they say usually a lot of times that they say we'll get back to you if you if we're interested in hiring you. And on the other hand, though, that we can maybe think about is like the question to where that a lot of times that they ask on the job interview is like usually questions such as how long did it take for you to get here, and a lot of times though that some people that may say about between 20 and 25 minutes, and on average though that at the time it seems like whatever questions that they ask you, a lot of times that they're just trying to get together, they're just trying to gather information, they're trying to gather clues about if we hire you, then more likely if the information that you provide is accurate for what the type of person that we really need it is. And that type of person could be what you calls like somebody to be in charge of you say running computers, or running the stores, or you say opening and closing the stores, or maybe opening up the office, it is running the office store, something like that, any other type of job. And I can tell anybody here, I don't know if anybody who ever has worked at like a hardware store, if you were to work at like a hardware store, of knowing about maybe the types of responsibility, of course, you have at that, and plus you're working at, like you say, with the insurance company it is, but other jobs, of course, that you probably think about that there are probably millions of jobs that I can say that on average I could probably guess that there's probably about at least altogether maybe about I don't know, about I would say about maybe 5.8 million or something like that jobs that more likely that are out there, besides what you call like working for like a car wash or something like that. But so far with job interview, that a lot of times that anybody maybe think about that if you're going to be going through a job interview, such as what you call for Smile, it is that knowing about that that you go walk into a room when you shake the person's hand or you greet them, and then the next thing you know, it's like that people may think about, you can kind of tell that maybe that they're nervous, just by the fact about maybe how they talk, and then of course that their hands are shaking, whichever it is, or that maybe they, the look that they got on their face, whichever it is. But a lot of times though, if you're going to be looking eye to eye with somebody and you meet them, and a lot of times that I keep thinking about that the job interviews that I've gone to, like whenever they ask you a question, it seems like a lot of times that really, is that the answer that you want? And so a lot of times with some people that may say, well, we can't really tell you exactly if that's the answer we're looking for, but if we ask you a question, at least we would ask you to give us a simple answer, and that you bring and then whatever information, of course, that you completed, like on the application, it is that you'll look over that. A lot of times we say with the managers that they look over that on your application, and a lot of times though that if you were to complete an application, they will look over that and say that you have you want to apply for like what you call like a say custodian, or be in charge of doing the automobile parts or something like that at the shop, or whichever it was. And I can tell anybody here that with most of the time, with most interviews though, that whenever they ask you questions, it is, and a lot of times though that I can tell anybody here that one question, of course, that they think, what do you think about working for the company it is, and on the other hand too, that they also may ask you, such as what do you think about so far as the rule about, we all know that the rule is that customer is always right, so if anything that goes wrong with the company or business, a lot of times that you don't know about to try to take care of it is. But on the other hand, though, that so far with good attendance, and of course with a good relationship with with learning new stuff, and anybody probably think about between change and learning new stuff, it is. But basically talk about like the type of education it is that most of us, whenever we complete an online application, it is that they would ask you, such as besides your name, it is the school that you went to, and I know nowadays that with most applications, especially online applications, that they get into details, such as they ask you questions such as what is your current address? Then they start asking you about your education, but what is your current address? and then your mailing address, and then on the other hand that they would also ask you about the information such as maybe your job experience, and then knowing about how well you're capable of working with this and working with that, and then on the other hand that anybody, and then I think nowadays that with most job applications that they even ask you about how much in minimum wage, by fair salary, about how much salary do you expect to make, with this job, if you do get hired on any position it is. And I'm thinking that with most applications, though, that they would more likely ask you that, about that, on a job application, that they would ask you questions such as, why, maybe how did you find how'd you hear about the position, and on your hand about how much money do you expect to make, if you do wind up working at this factory it is. And on the other hand, though, that with most jobs, though, that really, if there's a real, I could say that with anybody that there's kind of what you call maybe a right or wrong answer at some point, but whenever you walk in and meet the person it is, that some say that they ask you questions, and a lot of times, that I keep thinking about one of those questions would be that they would more likely ask you is about maybe about your experience, but talk about is like why, why should we hire why should we hire you, or this person, this person, other than another. Why should we hire you, or why should we hire that person it is, compared to hiring this other guy, this other person that more likely that was in here earlier, or somebody else that more likely that whenever they reviewed the application of the information that they collected from them, and then they were like, well, knowing about for who that they want to hire it is. And I could probably tell anybody here that a lot of times, though, that the best answer would be, at the most part would be like what you call is like a, for the best answer would be, it's like for say for good attendance, it's like if you want to go ahead and write for good attendance it is that you're on time, you do your work, it's like you do your job. And on the other hand, that knowing about with anybody would maybe say about that if you do wind up getting hired somewhere, it is of knowing about that maybe that you can maybe put that's like you show best relationship. I could say best friendship it is. You show best friendship with others, and are willing to share and work with others on what you or the person knows. And on the other hand, that with anybody will maybe sound like that a lot of times whenever they ask that question, so far as if it's like what you call for education it is, so far if the major, it's for the major, or if it's like you talk about besides school it is talk about say with the education, of course with the degrees, if you have like maybe a degree in sociology or psychology, or if it's doctor's degree, a law degree, or whichever like any type of degree it is. But on the other hand too, that the information, of course, with the like anybody maybe think about, that if you're good at working with the fax machine, and like I'm talking about, I'm like that so far that get a job being in charge. With anybody would probably think about it. If you're going to be at age 15, if you're going to be at about 15 years old, it is, and knowing about the types of jobs that more likely that you can get whenever you're 15. Because I remember whenever I was 15, got a job working in fast food, but I was thinking about if my first job was going to be about maybe plowing roads. It's like if snow it was, or operating a snow truck or something like that. But on the other hand, if they wanted to leave you in charge of taking orders, if anybody made me think about that so far as with orders, so that with most of the time with orders, that if with orders, or it could be like what you call layaways or something like that, or say cash, if it's managing money, you name it, more likely any job that more likely that needs to be done at some point, that more likely they're going to ask somebody for that now, knowing about to trust somebody, knowing about who do you trust, of course, to do the job right. And with most of the time though, that say for the job interview though, interviewing this person and knowing about that they want to work for the company or business, and maybe want to do work for you, it is, and do work for that person, and then they have to tell them, the questions that, of course, that they ask you, and a lot of times with the answers, though, that knowing about, what best ways, of course, of how they're being honest it is. And with most of the time, though, that with most job interviews, let's just say if you don't get the job, it is, and they may have made their decision about who they want to hire, and on their hand, too, that, some people may say that, it's that maybe that they did get aggravated, they didn't get the job, but on the other hand too, that knowing about that, that you showed your best effort of knowing about during the job interview. When I even heard too that a lot of times that they say that don't smoke during an interview, and of course dress nicely and appropriately, and for the job interview so far as answer the questions best of your knowledge it is. But on the other hand, the way I think about it, I'm like, then the number one part about, of course, about is that the things that to take about talk about, it's like what change though is talk about just take at least responsibility for at least one thing, of course, other than being worried about it. But alright, let's talk about right here so far as the job interview, say for an artistic smile, so far as say with the coloring activity.